Hello and welcome to our guide to incorporating a private company limited by shares in Singapore. This guide will provide you with an overview of the requirements before incorporating a company, including the appointment of auditors, the preparation of financial statements and annual returns, as well as other important compliance matters, among others. One of the most crucial steps when incorporating your business is the selection of a name for your company. A name search is usually conducted beforehand to ensure that the proposed name is not already in use by another business entity. All proposed names must first be approved by the Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Authority, or ACRA. You may submit more than one name for approval. The application for name approval is conducted online. A fee of 15 Singapore dollars is charged per application. The processing time is usually within 1 working day, unless the name is referred to referral authorities for review, in which case it can take 2 weeks to 2 months. The approved name will be reserved for 120 days from the date of application. Upon approval of a company name, the incorporation request may be submitted online. Company registration can usually be completed within 1 working day, provided all incorporation documents and information are in order. A registration fee of 300 Singapore dollars is payable for a company limited by shares. A company must have at least one shareholder. The shareholder can either be an individual or a corporation, local or foreign. The maximum number of shareholders a private company can have is 50. Every company must have at least one director who is ordinarily resident in Singapore and must be at least 18 years of age to be a director. There is no limit to the number of local or foreign directors a company can appoint. However, if the sole director of the company is a foreign national, that person must first obtain an entrepass or hold an employment pass issued by the Ministry of Manpower to work in the company concerned. The foreign director must also have a local residential address to be considered to be ordinarily resident in Singapore. An employment pass holder who wishes to become the director of a local company must first get a letter of consent from the Ministry of Manpower. There is no requirement for the directors to also be shareholders. For instance, non-shareholders may be appointed directors. Where the company is only one shareholder, that sole shareholder may also be the sole director of the company. Along with the director, a company is also required to appoint a company secretary. The company secretary must be appointed within 6 months of incorporation. The company secretary must also be a natural person, and their principal place of residence must be in Singapore. However, the office of secretary must not be left vacant for more than 6 months at any time. A company may appoint a Chief Executive Officer or CEO to be responsible for the management of the company. In relation to a company, a CEO means any one or more persons by whatever name described who is in direct employment of or acting for or by arrangement with the company and is principally responsible for the management and conduct of the business of the company or part of the business of the company as the case may be. However, the appointment of a CEO is not mandatory, and a person may be appointed as both a director as well as a CEO of a company. In Singapore, there is no minimum share capital imposed on companies. Therefore, it is possible to incorporate a company with a 1 Singapore dollar share capital. The share capital can be held in any currency and not necessarily Singapore dollars. The share capital can be increased at any time after the incorporation of the company. To note, there is no concept of authorized capital or par value for Singapore companies. A company must have a registered office in Singapore from the date of its incorporation. The registered office must be open and accessible to the public for not less than 3 hours during ordinary business hours on each business day. Directors, CEOs, and secretaries are allowed to report an alternate address in place of their residential address. The fee payable is 40 Singapore dollars. The alternate address must meet the following requirements. It must be located in the same jurisdiction as the individual's residential address. It cannot be a post office box address, and it must be an address where the person can be contacted. Unless a company is exempted from holding an annual general meeting or AGM, or has dispensed with the holding of an AGM, it is required to hold one within 6 months after its financial year end. Unless the company is exempted from audit under the provisions of the Companies Act, the directors of a company are required to appoint a person or persons to be the auditor or auditors of the company within 3 months from the incorporation of the company. The financial statements presented at an AGM shall be made up to a date not exceeding 6 months before the AGM. The financial statements must also be duly audited unless the company qualifies for audit exemption. All dormant companies and private companies which meet the small company criteria are exempt from audit. If a private company is part of a group, the company must qualify as a small company and the entire group must be a small group. Let us first examine what defines a small company. A small company is a private company which meets at least 2 of the following 3 quantitative criteria for the immediate past 2 consecutive financial years. Its total revenue does not exceed 10 million Singapore dollars, its total assets do not exceed 10 million Singapore dollars, or the total number of employees is less than or equal to 50. A small group, on the other hand, must meet at least 2 of the aforementioned 3 quantitative criteria on a consolidated basis for the past 2 consecutive financial years. It is important to note that, except for certain dormant companies which are exempt from preparing financial statements, companies which are exempted from audit will still be required to prepare a set of unaudited financial statements compliant with the Singapore Financial Reporting Standards. An annual return must be filed with ACRA within 7 months after the end of its financial year. A set of the financial statements needs to be lodged with the annual return unless the company is a solvent exempt private company or EPC. An EPC refers to a private company which has no more than 20 shareholders and with no corporation holding any beneficial interest in the company's shares. A company is considered solvent if it is able to meet its debts when they fall due. Certain dormant companies are exempted from preparing financial statements and are therefore also not required to lodge their financial statements with the annual return. Instead, these companies will lodge a statement in the prescribed format signed by the directors. With effect from 31st March 2017, all companies, unless exempted, are required to maintain a register of registrable controllers and register of nominee directors and to make the information available to public agencies upon request. With effect from 30 July 2020, all companies, unless exempted, are further required to lodge the information contained in their register of registrable controllers with ACRA and any subsequent updates within 2 business days of the change. Companies are required to update ACRA within 14 days of any changes to the following: the company's name, address, and business activity, the appointment of directors, secretaries, auditors, and CEO, and the personal particulars of company officers and shareholders.